Welcome to Tidbits and Scribbles. Okay, so I have my friends with me today, but we were going to do something like I would have readers on and we could answer readers' questions. Readers could ask us anything, basically. But it turns out readers are a shy group of people, and they didn't want to be on camera. So I have their questions, or I have questions that I asked them, or they asked me, and we have answers to them, and we're just going to answer them like we do in our roundtable discussions. So let me bring my friends back. I do have friends. Hey, friends.
Hey.
All right. So I will start with one of the questions that I was asked, or I asked them, because I was kind of hoping we could drill the readers on, like, what makes you pick up a book? What makes you put down a book? And that's exactly what I asked. The first one I asked was, is there anything you'd like to ask authors? My most smart alecky friend said, what's your favorite recipe for a villain? But honestly, that's a pretty damn good question.
Yeah, it is.
What's your favorite recipe for a villain?
I write horrible villains, so I can't answer this one.
Horrible as in the character is horrible, or you're not very good at it?
I'm not very good at it. I will be the first to admit my villains are not... occasionally, it will happen. I accidentally get one right. But my best villains turn out to be natural disasters or you know, something like that. It's a struggle for me to write an effective villain because they're always the hero of their own story.
Right.
But sometimes you want the villain to be so bad, but you don't want them living in your head while you write them.
Yeah,
because they may not exit
leave.
the premises when you serve them an eviction notice.
my head came.
Hey.
Yeah, that depends really on what story I'm writing. Like I wrote one about a pedophile serial killer, and like Dan says, they get inside your head, and I had to go with all the serial killer tropes, what happened to him as a child, yada yada, and why he turned out that way. And I'm hoping it's good. Everybody gets as creeped out reading it as I got creeped out writing it.
Yes.
But then on the other hand, I wrote a story about a psychopath that was totally inspired by Helen Reddy's song Angie Baby.
Okay.
So it's just kind of what hits me as to what kind of villain I need for this story.
Okay. Carl, you've written a bad guy.
Oh, yes, I have.
And a very effective one, I might add.
Oh, well, thank you. I took a lot of those things from real life people that I've known, amalgamated pieces. And like Dan said, that they think that they're doing a good job. They think, oh, I'm the hero of my story, and you kind of have to show why they think that, why that twist gets in there. And so for me, I have to have them do bad things and then go back and say, okay, this may be why this guy did this. If anybody cares, because some people will care. You very rarely want to create a villain that you say, this guy is just evil. Because if a person was totally evil, their life would not go very well for them.
Right. Well, and I think in the books, with the villain, you want your reader to kind of feel for him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
or at least have enough emotion that when they get their comeuppance, the reader is like, yeah, that was supposed to happen that way.
Yeah.
Not like,
Yep.
ooh, that was horrible ending, you know. No, it's he was supposed to get that, or she was supposed to get that ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
because like
it's easy to write a sociopath, but it's hard to write a villain.
yeah, yeah. My villain was a farmer. So he's sneaking through a field, but he's being very careful not to step on any of the crop. He he has to knock this dog out, but he does it in a humane way so the dog will live. It's just knocked out temporarily.
Right.
So
He's quiet.
those kind of things he cared about. Now he was not a very nice person to women, and that comes out in the story. But yeah, he had to have some redeeming qualities, or else his life would have been crap. Totally, it wasn't a very great life to begin with, but
What do you think, Rich?
Well, I like taking the idea of someone who thinks that they're doing right, they're going along the right path, but adding in just a dash, going back to the recipe analogy, of holier than thou.
Yeah.
Because I can do no wrong. The right way to do this is cleansing by fire.
Yeah.
And those are very compelling folks. Now, granted, this next piece is cinema, but look at Darth Vader. Darth Vader was a well enough crafted villain that they decided to do the prequels to show the fall of Anakin Skywalker, to show how he got there.
Yes.
And then the original trilogy, which is now technically the second trilogy, is his redemption arc. So there always needs to be something in there that might be able to be redeemed. You don't always have to redeem them, but there has to be that one glimmer of
Possibility, yeah.
what if, and that makes the villain a little bit more heart-wrenching when they turn from that path and go, no, I'm not going to take this rope to safety, and I'm going to go this way. And that is something that's just beautiful, that draws you in. I write really wacky, weird types of villains because I know the dark places my brain can go, and I don't want to go down those roads because I want to make sure I can get back and I don't stay that man.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to go Jack Torrance.
I'm very much that way. If I'm in the story, I'm in it. I'm living it. I joke all the time about I just write the incident report, but really, when I'm in the story, I'm in it. I'm in that character's head. I am living it as they lived it, right alongside them. So if I write a villain that's really, really a good villain, let's say, I was living it for a little while. So you'll see my moods go up and down with that. It's tough to pull yourself into it and out of it when you're that deep into the story.
And you also want to make sure you don't write such a good villain that people start rooting for them instead of your hero.
Yes.
Or heroine.
Yeah.
Or whatever the gender neutral term might be.
In one of my stories that has not been released yet, but I plan to get it out maybe next year. This is a science fiction comedy, and Donna's the only one seen it. So, but in it, one of the leaders of this group decides he wants to come to Earth because he wants beer, and the villain,
Noble purpose.
Yeah, the villain of one of the stories does not want his planet to have beer. So he does some villainous things to prevent this thing that he considers villainy. And it's some played back and forth on that. And so people
the villains are revenuer.
Ow.
No, it's just a blue nose. Oh.
Okay, so the next thing that we have on hers was How concerned are you to be accurate on things like technical things or time period aspects? Yeah. So
Very
for
You
me,
much.
have to be.
I'm pretty vague about the era that I write in.
Mhm.
I don't nail down a because if you say King Louis, people expect certain things are going on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If you say King Richard, that's a whole nother thing. I don't do that. I don't nail down a time. I just say back when. But if I bring in something like a cell phone, that's going to pull my reader. So I'm not too particular, but I am concerned about like what's going on in the story. What did I use as a weapon in that story? Was it available back then or near that time period? Because I can't use an oddball weapon if there's no way on the planet that could get back there because that'll pull the reader out. So for me, I'm not too worried about it just yet. There hasn't been a story yet that I have had to worry about it.
I had to worry about it in the Mad Gasser Cheerleader because most of the stuff happens in the 70s and 80s, and that was pre-cell phone, pre-computer. So a lot of the things that happen, are read in magazines, or they hear from someone else, or they telephone someone, or they meet that person in person and talk.
Yeah.
Now by the time I wrote the sequel to that, 30 or 40 years had passed, so there was a lot more technological things. So that was much more in the present, and so I could include those things in there. And the fact that the one lady has a computer and she's learned computing just because of the incidents, and has been able to do her own data bank,
Investigating.
has a big part in the story.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the problem with the timeline or anything, but my Beth and Hill series has a lot of action shots in it, and I like to be sure that can my character actually do that movement.
Yeah.
I had a boxing scene in one, and I had to figure out exactly how they would be moving in because if you don't get that right, somebody's going to call you on it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Look at Ari Salvatore and how detailed he gets for sword fights and martial
Mhm.
arts scenes.
Yeah.
Same type of thing. A lot of people have major issues if you're like, no, that's not how that maneuver's done.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then there's the problem with in certain genres they require a certain vocabulary for the language, and
Mm-hmm.
if you accidentally drop in an anachronism, it kind of blows all of everything else you've done so far out of the water
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
by pulling the reader out of the story
Oh
because
heck yeah.
Hmm.
mm,
Well,
uh, you
Even
had somebody say okay when that was not
yeah.
something
well,
anybody in that time period would have said.
right, and that's bouncing from history or historical to the modern stuff that I write. I noticed now I'm putting in things like can't, won't, don't. I can't do that with the historical stuff. They wouldn't have said it that way.
Yeah.
They'd have said
Exactly.
cannot, will not, won't, or will not. Contractions weren't used. And even the word all right was even spelled differently. It was all right. It was
Mhm.
not minus the L and smashed together.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's not just little things like that. You've also got to be very careful with like medical terms. I was at a workshop once with these two sisters-in-law who wrote romance, and they had one of their books. They had was about heart transplant,
Yeah.
and when they got the book back, one of the medications had been spelled wrong. But it was like 300 letters wrong long. They didn't figure anybody would notice. No, they got dozens of letters.
Mm-hmm.
that this
Mhm.
medication had been spelled wrong.
And if you're working in strict historical, oh, Lord help you if you put in an anachronism of some kind.
That's
Because
why.
the readers of that genre will
Hmm.
notice.
Oh, they'll nail you
And
on it. Yeah.
they will come after you with pitchforks and torches.
Oh yeah.
Or
Especially when it comes to like a lady's outfit. Jude Devereaux, I think, was the one. I used to read a lot of her historical Regency stuff, and she would, down to the detail of the material used, describe
Mhm.
that woman's dress, and each layer was described. And it's like, first of all, I don't need that much detail in my romance. I don't. But because of what she wrote, it was required back then. People liked reading about what dress she was wearing and what it was made of. And if she got something wrong, they would nail her on it. So just
Now,
for one story to research the clothing worn, like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Well, even in,
steampunk is kind of like that, but it's a
Yeah.
little bit more forgiving
Yeah.
as long as you use a generalized Victorian sentence structure to describe the technology. You can get away with having them have stuff that was not around,
Yeah.
but some mad scientist somewhere or some mad engineer somewhere uh, built one, and it's the
Right.
only one that ever existed. So
Yeah.
you can get away with that, but uh, it's in the word choices and the vocabulary and the way the sentence structure flows.
Mhm.
It sounds as if okay, you know how uh, Marvel Comics used to write Thor with um the low budget imitation Shakespearean speech to indicate he was from way back when.
Mhm.
Well, way back when is not the only time that used very very formal constructions of
Right.
the verbiage and um, the sentence structure.
Right.
Um, there are circumstances when a character will speak more formally and it sounds older, but you know for a fact it's a little bit more modern day, but that just indicates that character is a
And
little
honest,
old or old fashioned.
and
Mhm.
honestly, with Thor, they kind of screwed it up. They used more of a British diction than what should
Uh,
be a more Germanic or Norse
Exactly. Yeah.
um,
yeah.
sentence
Like I
structure
said,
and,
they
and
used
arrangement.
the low budget Shakespearean sort
Yeah.
of.
They went for
It's not
archaic.
actual
They didn't go
Shakespearean.
for proper region.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like
Okay.
writing something in Regency when it should be Empire. You
Okay.
know.
So the next question we have is, do you read the book first or watch the movie first?
Ooh.
Yeah. See, I'm a total traditionalist. I read the book.
Usually, I have read the book first, but there have been a couple times where I've actually watched the movie first. Like I saw Jurassic Park. No, watch. It is not time for me to move. I've watched Jurassic Park before I read anything by Michael Crichton, actually. And then I went back and I read the book, and I just thought the book was so much better. But if I could step back to the previous question for a second.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, one of the projects I'm working on, I am stuck exactly on that because I am working on something that is leading up to October, I think it was 8th, 1871.
Okay.
Early October 1871, the Great Chicago Fire, having it
Yes.
a much different reason for it starting.
Hmm.
And my villain in that actually just wants to go home. They're trapped and they just want to go home. But it kind of, it's a world where everything has gone wonky and the timeline has screwed up. So there's things that shouldn't be in 1871, like airships and stuff like that. And it's a little bit steampunk, a little bit spellpunk, a little bit fantasy, a little bit horror. So it's part of me is just going, okay, which part do I let lead right now? Um, so I get really, really stuck on the timeline for that one. But My shorts, I don't have that problem with. When I wrote the Chandler, I thought it was going to take a whole hell of a lot longer, and the story came to me. The skeleton came in about 2 hours, and it took me about 12 hours to write the entire thing, but it's only a couple-page story.
Hey, Dawn. Dawn's back.
Hello, Dawn.
Welcome back.
Say,
So
Little bit of hail, but we're good.
I was going to say, if the storm has passed you, it is rumbling near me. I don't know if
It's
it's going to be
coming.
anything more than rumble, but it's
It's
rumbling.
coming your way, but it's losing its steam. So,
And it usually does when it crosses the Illinois River. So,
yeah, it
Yeah,
said like it was coming here. There was like golf ball size hail. We had
Oh,
pea
wow.
size hail. So, I mean, in the matter of a half hour, it gone down that much. So it is.
I'm sorry about that. I cooked chili Saturday. I've been trying to eat all of it since then. It's going to rumble
Damn
a
it,
little
man.
bit.
Anyway,
Michaela, you were asking about the movies, and I did the opposite of what Rich did. I read Jurassic Park and then watched the movie. And I noticed pieces that were taken out that were actually important to the plot.
Yes.
And
And I like the book ending so much better.
Yeah, and so it was like, oh, okay. So before I went to see the next movie, I think it was Congo, I read the book. And I think in that case, the movie might have been slightly better than the book, but, you know.
I was going to
I
say, for
felt-
me, the most part, I've read the book and then went, oh, there's a movie? Except with Jurassic Park and anything by, like Stephen King. I don't read his books because I'm not into horror. But every once in a while, the regular channels will have something like a Saturday, afternoon movie.
Mhm.
And I'll see bits and pieces of it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't like these movies. And then
Stephen
somebody
King
says, oh,
movies
that's a
got me
Stephen
into
King
books.
movie. I'm like, it's a what?
Yeah. Most of the time with me, I either will have read the book 30 years before a movie was made,
Mhm.
or I'll go see a movie and then see somewhere in the credits based on the work by. I go, oh,
Yeah.
there's a book.
Yeah, there's a book.
Yeah.
Hey,
got to get that book. Yeah.
Now, here's another question spiraling off of that one.
Yeah.
How much of a purist are you for the printed materials that you've read, whether it be comics or the books, to the movies? Like watching the Marvel movies, if you've read the Marvel comics and going, that's not how that worked.
Yeah.
How well are you able to divorce yourself to go, not my product, it's done well, not how I would done it.
Well,
yeah,
no-
after doing
knowing full well that doing a movie is not doing a book.
right.
They have to be different.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're
Mhm.
different media entirely.
Mhm.
For me, it depends on which one was the most enjoyable. If the movie's better than the book, as far as watching the movie versus reading the book, that's great. If the book has got so much more going for it that just had to be chopped out for the movie because, hey, they've only got 2 hours instead of the 18 it takes you to
Yeah.
read.
Yeah.
300 pages does not translate well into a single movie format.
No.
And
Yeah,
many books are even longer than that.
Yeah.
Now-
I noticed that with Dune, 800 pages of book, 2 hours of movie. They were so different.
Roughly 120 pages of script.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. And
Each
stuff,
page of script is roughly 1 minute.
and it also depends on which version you happen to
Yeah.
be exposed to first.
Mhm.
I mean, if there's an earlier movie that was a better adaptation of the book than the later movie that you saw first, you might have a little trouble wrapping your head around, oh, this earlier movie, wow, that's not, no, I can't
Well-
make up my mind on this.
It kind of bleeds into reboot syndrome too.
Kind of.
Is the reboot better?
Yeah. Well, and so for me, one of my favorite movies is Beauty and the Beast by Disney.
Which
Now-
one, live action or animated?
That's just it. Now, I know the animated one word for word, scene by scene, note by musical note. I know it that well because I've watched it that many times. Then they came out with the live action, and I'm like, oh, yay, this will be fun. That
No.
was such a piece of poop. I was so angry. I was throwing things at the TV. I was angry. She didn't part her hair on that side. She's out of tune on that song. That song was never put in there. That scene was never there. Why did they put it there? It makes no sense to the story. Like, I had details of why that version sucked.
I've got a further question for you. How did you feel about the TV series that had nothing to do with the story except for the two main characters?
They do that with a lot of kid series because they've done it with the
Well,
animated.
this was
movie.
a very adult series. I mean,
They did it with Aladdin. They did it with
They did it with Spirit just recently. They've done it.
Yeah.
They've done it with all of them, and it's like, why would you go that far off the story? There are so many stories you could have made within that story to make your stupid little series, but you made it stupid.
well, just like
well,
us,
the reason
they
I
see
brought up
something
Beauty and
and
the
they build.
Beast was it was an excellent TV series. I mean, talking about back.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you're talking about the
She's-
Linda Hamilton,
she's-
Ron Perlman.
Yes, Linda
Yeah.
Hamilton, Ron
She's never
Perlman.
seen that.
It was beautiful. Had
It was
absolutely
great.
nothing to do with the fairy tale or anything else
Yeah.
They
except for the
recently
premise.
rebooted that with,
Here's a beautiful
Christian Bale.
woman and a guy who was a lion, and they were in love and had this entire society.
They've
First
done
story
that
of
with
furry.
Tarzan too. They brought Tarzan to the city, and now Tarzan's in the urban jungle and fighting crime and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And where in the Beauty and the Beast that Dan was talking about, which I completely forgot about. Ron Perlman's Beast was living in the sewers and fighting crime and protecting people. And again, they recently rebooted that type of series. Okay, not recently.
Somewhere in the last half century.
Sometime after Smallville, because the girl that played Lana Lang in Smallville was the female love interest in the reimagination that came out in the early 2000s.
I see the differences between the book and the movie the same way as I see the differences between Star Trek with Shatner and Nimoy and Star Trek with Pine and what's his name. And I don't know if Dan remember this, there's a phrase from the 60s that goes, the same but different.
Yeah.
And I view them as two different things.
And that's the thing, is you have to be able to divorce yourself. Wheel of Time was recently adapted by Amazon for a TV series. And I'm sitting there, I'm trying to hold my tongue. Misty's enjoying it because she doesn't reread the series year after year after year after year, which I do. So some of these scenes are so ingrained in me, and some of these characters are so ingrained in me, and I'm like, that's not how. I'm like, I understand it's a visual medium. You can't keep doing the voiceover because you get the sound in his head as he's thinking to himself. So I get that, and it's a great series. But if I had my druthers, I'd have my book.
I ran into the same thing with Peter Jackson's Middle Earth movies. Because I make it a point to reread The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
I was so
once a
pissed that they
year.
removed Tom Bombadil. I hate that part of the book, but I was so pissed when they removed it.
Yeah, I can understand that, and I can see from somebody
series.
telling a visual story from their standpoint that, oh, this is going to slow us down because people are not going to understand this bit at all. without
Yeah,
having read all the books.
They don't need all these old world spirits. They can introduce a couple here and there to get everything to go the way it needs to go.
To this day, I could not tell you which I prefer, the movies or the books. I like them both. I really love
And you
them
can
both.
do that.
Well,
But they're
have you ever seen
different.
like plays or so can be different than the movies? You look at like Steel Magnolias, which started as a play, and it only had the 6 women in it. That's the entire cast. Well, when they made the movie, then they decided to bring
They
in
had
all
to bring in the whole
men.
town.
Yeah, they had to bring in all the men then. And when you go see the play, which my mom and I did, she's like, that was different. I'm like, you didn't know and I had known, but I had never seen it, but the play just had the 6 women in it. And she's like, yeah, that was just very different. And they are both very enjoyable in their own rights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very difficult when you have a book, though, because you have places there where a narrator or whatever is telling things about things, or about people. And how do you adapt that into the screenplay so that people watching the movie will know, okay, this is why that person's doing that. You don't want to maybe show it on screen.
There's a channel, Cinema Sins, on YouTube. I love it. It's hilarious as all hell. It's a guy that used to work in a theater and have to watch movies all the time because he was a projectionist and stuff like that. And he would just be like, okay, things that piss me off about movies, exposition, narration. And he would just start racking up sins. And, that's the thing is, when is narration the right spot in a visual and audio medium where it's perfectly fine in a written?
Yeah. Well, and when I first started writing books for a professional publisher, they were like, no, you can only have 2 points of view, the 2 main characters. I'm like, but there's so many more characters in this story. You can't, what do you mean you can only have 2 points of view? But when I pulled myself back a little bit and just calmed down, it actually makes you a better writer because there's all these things that you want to get into this scene, but you can only use 2 viewpoints to do it. How do you do it? So with those restraints, I had to figure it out. And sometimes I had to leave stuff out that I thought was really, really important. And yet I still have people going bonkers over that story. I'm like, well, yeah, but there's so much you don't know. And they're like, it's fine. We love it anyway.
But the beautiful thing is you can go back and you can rewrite that story from 2 other points of view or how many ever to tell the complete story too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just did that. I just added stuff back in. I added viewpoints back in. So yeah, now Secrets should be freaking amazing with its bonus content.
Very good.
And then there's the point where Fred Saberhagen, God rest him, he was the world's greatest at telling a story from 2 different narrator characters' point of view. Each one had each chapter had a different narrator.
Yeah.
Between the 2.
Right.
And then it would come together at the end or towards the end when both narrators were in the same scene, and you got to read it from both of their points of view.
Or if you're looking at the Book of Swords,
then it would split again to what was almost 2 different endings, but they were the same ending, just from 2 different points of view.
Yeah. So Dawn, what makes you as a reader pick up a book or not pick up a book?
And getting paid is not one of the answers.
Paid to read books. I like all different genres. I guess I just look and I look at titles, I guess, and kind of see what the kind of genre is going to look like. I'm not one to pick up based off of what the cover looks like, in the sense of, with what this looks like or this looks like. I mean, granted, it is nice looking at the cover of Warrior's Worth.
Nice to know.
It gets better.
Oh, I know. So I think though that for me, when I pick up a book, because I do like so many different genres, that it's like I just kind of go, "Ooh, what's this? Ooh, what's this? Ooh, what's this?"
Mhm.
And if it's a title that's, I don't know. I just
Okay.
it just
Okay,
needs
Before
to.
this may be not unfair to ask Don, but do you have once you've picked up that book and you've read that author, do you go back and look for that author again?
Yes, definitely. Yes, if I have enjoyed the book, I do want to read everything or as much as I can on them. I mean, uh, Michaela's a perfect example of that. But then Tess Gerritsen, I was a Rizzoli Niles fan, the show, and I'd always wanted to read the books. And I have every one of the books except for the last one that was put out last year, and I read all of them. So I am that person that it doesn't necessarily have to be the series, but I do like to read the what other else things that they have written.
Okay, because we are big author collectors. Donna,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
once we've read something, we say, okay, this is a good author.
Right.
We will buy more of that author's work because we figure, okay, if they did well on this one, they'll do well on the next one.
So
Fanny
in
Flagg is one of those for me. That I mean, obviously everybody know not everybody because the fried green tomatoes. Well, I came across the discount book of The Whole Town's Talking, which is one of her newer books. Knowing who she was, I had never read Fried Green Tomatoes, and I read it, and I'm like, I need to find the book. I've seen the movie. No, I need to find the book. I found the book. I've read it, and I recently came across there's a sequel to that about one of the characters as they grew up
Ooh.
from Fried Green Tomatoes, and I just picked that up I think about 2 weeks ago. So
neat. So what makes you put down a book if you've started reading it and say, I can't finish this?
Oh,
Yeah.
Stephen Donaldson. Hmm.
I have attempted to read Riding in Cars with Boys I think 3 times, and I just can't get into it.
Okay.
By Beverly D'Onofrio.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I had
I
a
just
little
I
bit of that
can
in high school.
yeah I can't get into it, or life happens and I just put down a book and I forget about it. It's nothing.
Okay.
A lot of times it's not even the book's fault. It's just life took a weird direction and I set the book down and oops.
Okay.
For
I
me,
threw-
it's world building. If you start out and you start building your world, okay, this is what happens, and magic is real, and this happens, and but you can't do this, and I'm like, okay, when does somebody do something in here?
Yeah.
Oh
And
yeah.
I
that-
threw
Loads of
Jurassic Park
exposition, but
across
no
the room.
action.
right.
Um,
For me,
And
it was
Kelly.
back in college. I ran into this writer who absolutely beautiful world building, wonderful characters. The point of view character, the hero, was obnoxious.
Uh-oh.
Nobody could stand him. And this went on through a trilogy
Mhm.
and then a second trilogy.
Oh,
And
Lord.
it's like, no,
I
I'm
appreciate
not buying any more of these. No.
Hey, Keisha.
Hello, Keisha.
I whipped Jurassic
What were you
Park
going to say, Rich?
I whipped Jurassic Park across the room. I was fine with the creating dinosaurs from the DNA and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
when they got to the computer hacker kid that's 11 years old figuring this stuff out, I'm like, that's not how computers work.
Mhm.
Something that just totally rips me out. We can go completely, and the same thing happens with certain medical things.
Mhm.
Like whenever I see in a TV show or read in a book where someone is shocking a person with a flat line,
Yeah.
that doesn't
They're gone.
work. Defibrillation is stopping the heart so that heart can start again. If
Yes.
the heart is already stopped, you are not jump starting it. The only thing you can do is try to do compressions to see if you can pump start that
Right.
motor.
And I learned that in a CPR class, and I thought, all those damn TV shows I've watched are wrong.
Yes.
I learned
They're
that through
dramatic
going
as
through
all get
EMS
out and
training.
entertaining,
Yeah.
but they're wrong.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. Michael Crichton. again,
Mhm.
the book Sphere. When I got to the end of that,
Yeah.
and the resolution of the story was make it didn't happen, I threw it across the room, and I never read another Michael Crichton book for 10 years.
Yeah, I felt the same way about that. I had mostly read most of Michael Crichton's work, and then got to Spear, and said, "Yeah, that's good that I read the rest of it first because it just yeah, okay."
What
And he's a
happened?
good writer. He's a good. Okay.
Major
plot-
Deus Ex Machina. Literally.
Yeah. Plot synopsis: a alien spaceship is discovered on the floor of the ocean. Research team gets sent down there in a submersible, has to board the thing, find out what's going on. Each of the people in the cast of characters goes into this one room, and it's basically a wish fulfillment chamber. Whatever they're thinking of when they go in there happens. And then at the end, one of the characters realizes they can go in there and make it didn't happen.
Ah,
Wipes
Yeah.
out all of the story entirely.
But it didn't totally work because that one woman retained something.
Yeah, and that's the trouble with the magic reset button.
Yeah, it doesn't always
Yeah.
reset everything.
And it doesn't always need to be reset. It's like
goodbye,
he got
Keisha.
Thank you, sir.
good night, Keisha. It's
Oh,
like he
bye-bye.
got to the end of the required word count. And go, okay, how do I tie this up?
Mm.
Yeah, that
It
sounds
just
like
seemed
what it was.
lazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and even there's been one of the other authors that I follow, Jenna Morisi. She even said that's one of her pet peeves. If she's reading a book and magically everything is fixed, why didn't we fix it, 100 pages ago? Why didn't we just snap our fingers then?
Yeah.
Like that's
Because the hero's journey really didn't happen, then if you can just snap the fingers and go back.
yeah, really.
Right. Or like she said, it's the chosen one, and they go through this whole trial and tribulations, and you get to the end, and it was within you the whole time.
Yeah.
No,
Mhm.
no, it was not. Okay.
Well, no, it is within
Oh,
you, but
oh, so
you've
you,
got to
you
work
didn't
to
like
bring it out.
you didn't like the end to Wizard of Oz then.
Yeah.
You had the means to go home all along.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but
did she
nobody
know
told
it? Or did she know that she did? So
Right.
that's the
Right.
thing.
She didn't know the password.
And
Yeah.
Glenda, why didn't you tell me when you gave me the dang shoes at the
Yeah.
beginning of the movie?
Yep.
Now,
I
another
Yeah,
love
thing,
because-
Wizard of Oz, but I always had a
That's
problem
the
with
thing. A
that.
lot of people think Glinda the Good Witch is the actual villain of the piece because she puts Dorothy through all this stuff and then sends her home by magic
Yeah.
Mhm.
Does her dirty work for her, basically.
for Glinda's own aims.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and you're
Dorothy-
kind of
many
talking,
of these
kind of going
stories-
back here, like with Kelly Austin, the Rembrandt stratagem. That's not my usual genre of books, but I read it because I know her, and I've gotten to know her through everybody, and I loved it. I enjoyed it. I don't really get into that kind of pulpy nor steampunk kind of. The world is a really cool world, but I got into it and I enjoyed it. So it's like that's why I said I like all different kind of genres. The one thing that I don't pick up books for is if it's a very well-known author. Generally, I don't get into a lot of the well-known authors.
Interesting.
I'm not well known. Why aren't you into me?
I don't have your books yet because you didn't tell me that your butt was going to hurt for writing for 3 hours, so I could say, "Hey, bring your books with so I can get them."
They were in the van. We
And
always
there's a
have.
difference. There's a difference between well-known and famous.
Infamous?
Yeah, that's the question I was going to follow up with was, do you want to read books by famous people? Some of the best-selling books seem to be celebrity books, political books.
Self-help books.
Oh,
Well,
Yeah.
I'm just saying
I-
those celebrity type, that
Oh,
Yeah.
we know
And-
how false that is.
yeah.
Right.
I'm
Right. Well,
going
it's like even
nonfiction,
when you
I'm going
get
history.
into, like, James
I don't
Patterson
really
or
like
the
Mm-hmm.
What are you saying, Rich?
So when it comes to nonfiction, I go history. I'm not into, Kim Kardashian's best-selling, how I showed my ass to the world.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to books that I pick up to read as a reader, um, I'll look at three things. One, does it have something compelling on the back matter that makes me go, hey, this is interesting? Because I'll read stuff outside my genre if the back matter sounds interesting. If there's, like on Amazon has a try for free where it's like the first 16 pages of a book sometimes or something like that. And usually, you set your hook in those first 10 to 16, 20 pages or so. So if I'm looking at that and I'm like, it's the first books I got into as far as fantasy goes. I was sick on the couch, 9 years old. Mom bought me Andrew Offutt's Shadow Spawn, which brought me entirely into the Thieves World series, and I had to read everything Thieves World, which exposed me to a lot more authors and stuff like that. And I've consumed a lot of those authors, throughout my life. Another time when I was sick, she bought me the Dark Sword trilogy by Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss, which led me to Dragonlance, which led me to all the other Dungeons and Dragons novelizations that I wasn't really aware was out there, even though I was playing the Dungeons and Dragons game. And it was cool to see these characters that I've seen in a game and how the people who created them ran with them. So if there's something compelling, if I can find something compelling about either the story, if the story is compelling, the plot and everything, I'll forgive not compelling heroes and antagonists.
Interesting.
Or vice versa. If the hero or the villain is really compelling, I can ignore the plot that kind of drudges on because I'm like, what happens to this person? I'll kind of trudge through. Game of Thrones, the novelizations. Well, they're not novelizations. The novels came before. I've never seen the TV series because my wife is overly Baptist, and I want to stay married.
I want to stay
And alive.
I'm more concerned about the married because the unalive, at least everything gets paid off and her and Crow can live in halfway decent accommodations. But the first book, A Song of Ice and Fire, A Game of Thrones was actually the name of the first book, I believe. It was just so hard to slog through, but I got hooked on a couple of the characters, and that's one that annoyed the piss out of me because viewpoint is changing every chapter.
Oh God, yes.
And you're jumping around so much.
I read an author that way that it makes it really hard to stay in the story.
Scott Sigler, an excellent horror author, used to podcast all this stuff for free. I don't know if he still does. I know that's one thing that he wrote in when he started getting his book contracts to become a New York Times bestselling author. But he always said, give a podcast 4 episodes. So I'm like, okay, I'll do that for everything I can. I'll give a series at least 2 books. I'll give a TV show at least 4 episodes, a podcast at least 4 episodes, because the first one might not just appeal to me. I read the second book of A Song of Ice and Fire. I don't remember the title of the book right now. I apologize. But like George R.R. Martin is going to listen to this and go, that son of a bitch. But anyways.
No, George got paid. He don't care.
Exactly. But, I read that one and I was hooked. And I just blew through the rest of the series because I got hooked in that second book.
I was first introduced to Mary Stewart through Reader's Digest, Touch Not the Cat. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a regular book. I need to have that book. Well, in getting that book, of course, you're looking at the other book on the shelf. Oh, she has a book about Merlin. love Merlin, love the Arthurian legend, which she also has a book on that. And she has a Merlin trilogy, which ironically has 4 books in it.
Mm-hmm.
But she writes that, but she also writes modern because Touch Not the Cat was set in modern days.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have every book she's ever written, and
That's how it
somehow,
goes. Yep.
somehow that led me to Nero Wolfe and Phyllis Whitney, and of course Agatha Christie,
Yeah.
Charlotte Armstrong.
And
Marjorie
there,
Allen-
there are other influences besides you walk
Yeah.
into a bookstore and see a book.
Right. Right.
Your parents have a book by this author, and you're a kid and you're bored, and they say, "Okay, yeah, sure, you can read it,"
Yeah.
and you go through and you go, "Wow, this Agatha Christie is really neat. I like this."
That's how I
None
got
of the books
addicted to
are.
Stephen King.
I mean, they're all different from one another, but they're all similar to one another in a different direction.
Hmm.
They're all mysteries. They're not all the same protagonist. They're not all the same hero. They're definitely not all the same villain. They're definitely not covering the same ground time and time again. Although, once you get through 60 or 70 of them, you begin to detect that there might be a formula involved somewhere.
Mhm.
But and then my dad was fond of reading westerns and some very good ones. I came to find
Right.
that, and some of them were actually based on newspaper cartoons and things from when he was a child. And he was also fond of war stories, which I had no interest in, but I'd already read everything I owned 75 times, so let's give this one a try.
Right.
And
Right.
you wind up being exposed to totally different writing styles and concepts and this, that, and the other thing. And some of them had a little bit of spice involved, which probably I was a bit too young for.
Yeah, but it was
But
probably something like he threw her skirts up and had a good time, and we move on with the story. Like that's literally what they wrote back then.
well, yeah,
It
I
wasn't
would.
like this member went into that hole there, and it
No,
felt
no,
really
no, no.
good. And,
I was well into my teenage years before I discovered that particular collection.
right, right.
So
But that's the thing that like. So I think that's probably what started me on the path of these books don't go far enough. I was reading my mom and my aunt's romance novels. Well, they were Cassie Edwards. If you go back and read those, they're good. They've got a little spice to them, but nothing like what I write because that's what I read. And I'm like, wow, romance books are good, but I can make them better. Ta-da! That's what I
there you
did.
go.
So that's where I was like, nobody's ever going to read this. I just wrote it for me, But I was looking here and I had one other question I wanted to touch on. I asked another friend, damn it, where's her response at? What did I ask her? What makes you love a book? And she says, being able to relate to the subject matter, an exciting plot twist I don't see coming. I'm like, oh, that's my books.
I want to live in that world. That would be my flat out answer.
Oh yeah. And on a similar level, not plot twist but things you didn't know before.
Oh yeah.
And all of a sudden you want to go look up real world stuff that has to do with what was going on in this book because hey, this writer made this dog crap sound interesting. Maybe I was missing a point.
Yeah.
Kind of the same concept.
Forensics or
History.
ballistics or something, you know?
Yeah, I've even read history and nonfiction books, based on events, and I've had writers that really pulled me into that time period or that event and made me go, "Ooh, I have to find out what happens."
Yeah.
And those are the kind that I like to follow. Is um, Ben McIntyre writes great espionage novels and such, and in one of them, they're trying to find a way to drop a dead guy in the sea so that the Nazis will look in his briefcase and find the false orders, not the true orders of what's going to happen. This is a true story. This actually happened. The
Operation Mincemeat.
Mhm. The British actually did this, and so
I have known this since grade school.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so I was reading the book, and he makes it come alive for you. You're riding in the ambulance along with those guys with the dead body that they're going to put in the sub that they're going to take over to Spain. I mean, it's like, wow, okay, will they make it? Oh my God, that driver is going to hit the, those kind of things.
It reads like an Ian Fleming novel.
Yeah.
It really does. And James Bond does not show up at all.
No.
But and neither does Christopher Lee, although Ian Fleming and Christopher Lee were part of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
historically, in real life,
Right.
they were part of that sort of thing.
What were you going to say, Dawn?
Well, I've just kind of been thinking, like you guys were talking about, like wanting to get into that world, and I'm sitting here going, yeah, I that's really kind of with me. It's like I wanted to go to Roguestone. I wanted to, in The Outsiders, it would have been very interesting to see what it would have been like to be, living on the wrong side of the tracks with the greasers. And it just, there's a book called She Drove Without Stopping, and it's set back in the late 50s and early 60s about kind of the beatnik world. And there was some really interesting twists in that book. And it's like, that's what draws me in. And even like, I love reading true crime novels too.
I love watching Forensic Files. It's probably one of my best shows, and I can watch it over and over and over again. And I don't know if it's the human condition that I'm trying to figure out what makes someone tick, what makes them do what they do. But you always come back to, at the end of it, there's always somebody there that, like, we never saw this coming.
Yeah.
And you think, how did you not see it? How did all these red flags not wave in front of your face? How did you not see it? They're too close to it.
That comes down to us being writers.
Mm-hmm.
We see writers' logic even when it doesn't necessarily apply. You'll see something on TV, and you go, "Oh, I know what's going to happen next." Oh, yep,
30 seconds
I
into an
knew she
episode
was going to
listing I
do
were
that.
watching
I
last
knew he
night
was
that
going to do
happened.
that. And the most entertaining things are when somebody turns the trope on its head. Everything comes out of left field. You think it's going to happen this way, and all of a sudden, something else you never thought of before, but there was foreshadowing, comes up and blows all your previous theories out of the water, and the whole show takes a totally different direction.
What did you say, Rich?
Last night, Misty and I were watching a TV show. Within the first 30 seconds, I'm like, oh, this person is actually the person that did this, that, and that. And I'm just like, please don't let that be so, because that would just be such a gut punch, because I like that character that it would be the gut punch too. And yeah, it ended up totally that way. Halfway through the show, Misty just looked at me. She's like, I'm like, that's the way I would have wrote it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you become a writer, you can go to a movie theater and watch the first few minutes, and you know exactly what's going to happen about
I almost got my
75% of the time.
2010 Wolfman. Because I'm like, oh, this character's the original werewolf. And everybody's like, no. And then when it actually that happens, they're like, you spoiled it. How did you know? Why did you do that? I'm like, that's the way I would have wrote it.
Really?
I'm like, you see this? You see this? Oh, damn.
Sometimes it's so obvious you can even predict lines of dialogue that come up later.
Yeah.
Forensic
And
Files for me.
it's a handicap because you if we weren't writers, we'd be able to go and enjoy these, never knowing what's going to happen. But as soon as you have the writer logic overriding everything else in your head, it's like the world has a script, and you've read the cliff notes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's me. I just try to do the most outlandish thing that probably would never happen, and that's what I'm hoping would happen.
Misty.
No,
you seem
I'm right there with you,
scared.
Dawn. That's why I write what I write. I would love to live at Roguestone. I'm not going to make Roguestone a place that I don't want to live. Like, it's always going to be this fun place, this place of mysterious stuff or sexy stuff or warriors that you would die for because, hello.
Right?
Who
I mean, I don't care if I'm helping Michael in the kitchen. I want to be there.
Yes. You know, it doesn't matter if you're peeling potatoes in the kitchen. Michael's got to be drop dead gorgeous. Like, it just is. So
Not as good
that's
as
why I
Gareth.
write, how I write, and what I write. But I also want you to live there. I want you to be in the moment. I want you to live there with the characters side by side. And that's why I write the way I do. So it boggles my mind when other people are like, oh, well, I don't like that genre. Like, you haven't read my books.
I'll try any genre as long as something in the book appeals to me, whether it's a plot, whether it's I can see myself on that journey.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to be the main character. I can just see myself in the journey, in the world, or if I can see myself hopefully in one of the more heroic characters that are at least on the good side, and not the villain. Although occasionally I've seen myself in the villain and I'm like, maybe therapy is on the table after all.
Maybe we should do that.
That is part of the writer's problem. And, you know, when you go to live in the story, you know, to write the story, you kind of have to live a bit of it. And sometimes, like Dan said, you want to kick the villain out at the end, but he's still in there.
Rattling around in your brain, and you're like, wait, no.
Yeah. There's only so much room in that holding cell.
Yeah.
There are 2 Jack the Ripper stories that I have never written because I don't want Jack in my head for long enough to write the books.
Well, and then there's the books where there's supposed to be a villain, and he's supposed to be a villain, and it turns out like, well, he's not really that, you know, mean or scary, or, you know, you're like, I could have poked him with a stick and he'd have fallen over. Like, that's not a villain, you know, and so it's not as easy as some people think to write a villain.
Right.
No, it isn't. Not at all.
Yeah, it's.
Which is why I suck at it
and get
so
back
badly.
again.
Yeah. You can't just write, this was a bad guy. He was really scary and everybody was scared of him. He's a bad guy. Like, that doesn't work. You have to get in and figure out what makes him tick, just like your main good characters.
Right.
And you're writing some of the things that they do, and you're like, the hell is wrong with me?
Right. What is wrong with them?
Yeah.
It's like, how did that come out of my brain?
I got those kind of questions.
Really?
Yeah, I got those kind of questions from people too, Rich. When they read The Mad Gasser, they were like, really? Said, no, not me.
No.
But
I love that you worry about that.
But you have to live there for a period of time, so
Right.
It is you, even though you're just like, hi, this is Bob, you're man on the street, and the hell is going on over here? You know, you're still unless you've read those actions happen somewhere in the world, if you're just completely making up those villainous acts, you're like, maybe I need to see that shrink after all, you know. Because
either that or I got to go back to the university library and check out the complete works of the Marquis de Sade after all.
Are also wonderful therapy too, because you can exercise a lot of demons and trap them in those words.
Oh, heck yeah. Name it after a bully in high school? Oh, yeah. Best thing ever. Best thing ever.
You do the mannerisms, maybe you do a little bit of the description, but you have a completely different name. So
Yeah.
therefore, you know that it's asshole A, B, C, or D,
Right.
but nobody else, unless they really intimately knew those people. Okay.
Right.
You said
would really-
intimately, not biblically.
would really guess that, oh, hey,
Yeah.
it's Bobby Sue,
Mhm.
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever.
And if
Take
you
the money
do it
and run.
right, not even the person you're not red shirting, but
Writing about it.
Tuckerizing
Yeah.
will know that it's them if they were to read your work.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing. Like, nobody I went to high school with is going to read my work. Nobody. Absolutely nobody.
Mhm.
Everybody you went to high school is reading your work.
No, they're not.
I beg to differ. I was there. I sold a book to her.
Oh, crap. Well, yeah, but she. Okay, not in my class. The 28 people I went to high school with in my class are not going to read my book.
Now, see, in Angie Baby, the person who gets murdered is based on someone in my life. I used a form of her name, and I think she'll ever read one of my books. But if she does, I hope she recognizes herself and see what I want to
Yeah.
happen to her.
That's another good
Sylvie.
thing. If for bullies and stuff like that, you could just toss the name on there as the victims of whatever your villain has done to, you
Okay,
know,
Mhm.
This is
you know,
true.
23 found dead at the site of this explosion,
Yep.
Yeah, and polling and start naming names and stuff like that, so that you can be like, this person is now evicted. They're no longer living
Yep.
rent free in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's so
Now they're paying the rent.
I used a character like that in pieces. And I tell you what, there are some scenes that I wrote that I'm just like, okay, I didn't need to relive that. Thank you. And it's not reliving the scene or things that actually happened. It's the emotion. It's the
Yes.
intimidation. It's the
Mhm.
Mhm.
what next? What's he gonna do next? What's he gonna think up next? What's he going to say next? It's that, ooh, I can feel it. I remember what it feels like, and now I can put that on the page.
And if you can do that, then your reader will feel the excitement too.
Uh-huh.
True.
One of the
Because
one
really,
of the few
that's our
villains
job.
I'm proud of
Mhm.
was one that I wrote very early on, and he was brainwashed by his mother to believe that he was King Arthur's son from way back when he knew better. He knew better, but she brainwashed him into thinking that he was. And basically, he was just the most unredeemable Loki sort of character that you
Oh.
could come across. And I had him do all kinds of nasty stuff and maybe got defeated in the end and maybe escaped. We will never know because I have yet to come across a reason to bring him back, but I left it open ended just in case.
Oh yeah, with my serial killer, it was the 7th book I had written for Hunter's Ridge, and I'd written all 7 books in like 2 years. And that, like I say, I creeped myself off so much I couldn't write another one, and that's how the Beth and Hill series got started because I turned to that one.
Yep. So
Sylvie.
You know?
Dawn, I was going to ask you, is there anything that you as a reader would want to know from authors?
Besides, when's the next book coming out?
Right, right. Because now that you're in
I
the
know she's
world,
working on it. She's working on it.
right, now that you're in the world of us and we've kind of brought you into the fold, and you too, Rich, is there's
I've
something
got a
you
foot
want
in
to
both
know?
worlds.
Right, right.
Although, my first one still hasn't come out yet, but we're going to talk about that later.
Yes, yeah.
I
But
do feel
No,
I do feel kind of responsible for Rich getting trapped in this writer's world.
Okay, he'll be fine.
Yeah, he'll be okay.
I was stuck in the writer's world way, way long before Apulian was a thing. But it sparked me further. Um, so actually, I found out about Apulian 15 years ago. Crow was just an itty bitty baby. I liked the hooks, and I kind of threw them out every time. I'm like, okay, I can't think of what to do. I want to get something written so I can at least get words out, even if it's just nothing. Get the habit of getting words out, and then suddenly I can start putting things together at some point in time. And then when Nick took over Nevermind the Furthermore, Carl invited me to check out Tidbits and Scribbles, and I'm like, Dan Hollifield, the hell do I remember that name? And then I put two and two together, and I'm like, oh crap, Apulian. So
did you fanboy? Did you fanboy?
Oh yes.
Something serious. Yep. It's okay.
Do you still
That's the thing
fanboy a
to
little
do.
bit now and then?
Yeah.
I enjoy everything I've heard about everyone's work so far. I really enjoy Dan's work. When I get the funds, I want to pick up, Carl's, Donna's, and Michaela's stuff, to at least give a first look at some of the stuff and then start purchasing more as time goes on. But anyways, I forgot where I was going.
What you were going to ask?
Squirrel.
Oh,
Well, yeah.
well, the main thing I would like to ask, but we know that we're going to pin this for a later conversation, is when we are looking to start putting our stuff together, what do we look for in someone as an alpha and a beta reader and an editor, and what do we look for help with cover design, and eventually go into where do we go through to get things like draft to digital? Do we go with Lulu? Do we go with KDP? But again, we said we're
Right.
going to table that for a later discussion. But for anyone that's watching, that is important things to think about. That's important things to look for, important things to ask if you are looking to make that leap into writing. One of the most important things is always going to be ass in chair, hands on keys, make words go.
Right. And one thing that I will say as a generalization, when you're becoming a published author, because like you said, I've been a writer since I was a freaking kid. But when you're becoming a published author, you need people in your corner that are going to tell you, no, that sucks. And not be afraid to hurt your feelings. Because if they don't say to you, this part of your writing needs tweaked, it needs worked on, and this is how. If they just say that it sucks, that's not somebody you want. You want somebody that can give you a critique and give you a reason. Because you can't improve if you don't know that you're lagging somewhere.
Exactly.
And I was always afraid to go further.
People. Yeah. You want somebody honest in your corner. Lots of somebodies that will say, no, honey, this sucks. Fix it. But if all they do is say fix it and let you run, that's not good either. They need to say fix it.
No, they need to give you some sort of direction.
Well, and on top of that, just saying fix it, is it something that they just don't like, or is it something that really does need to be fixed, and without having any background of what needs to be fixed and why, it could just be them being salty. They might say fix this because they don't like a specific name, and that's a character's name, so they just hate everything about the story.
That was my first ex-boyfriend, and he did this,
Yeah.
Well, like a couple of times we've gone through this, Michaela, so I guess we can talk about it. There have been, like, I'll say there's a specific instance. Okay, the guy was in a tree, and then he wasn't in a tree.
Yep.
And it almost sounds like he flew down. Did he fly? Did he jump?
Yeah, Carl's like, how the hell did he get down there? I'm like, I don't know.
And it had to kind of be told in that particular instance because it was important, I thought.
Yes.
Oh yeah. When a point is unclear,
Mhm.
But if you
to
don't, if
clarify
you
it,
have
yeah.
somebody that's in your corner and they're like, "Oh, this is really good," because even my drafts that I send to Carl and Donna, they're really good, but they're not perfect. And could I improve? Absolutely, every single day.
And
But
Everybody
if
sometimes
I'm
can.
not willing to hear that and they're not willing to go, this might hurt her feelings, I'm going to tell her anyway. If they're not willing to do that, I don't need them as editors. Those are my
And I
friends.
think that's one of the biggest things I'm scared about getting into any kind of writing is because my heart is on my sleeve and I'm going to be like, if I have anything, it's not right, it's not perfect. Oh my God, I don't know why I'm doing this. And
You gotta get over
Take that
perfectionist.
chill pill. We'll tell you
Yeah.
how it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
A lot of
Um,
times
see,
it's
that's
not
one
writer's
of my
block, it's
biggest
perfection
fears
block.
as
the
to why I haven't done a lot too.
Yeah, the problem is it's your baby, and you're saying,
Right.
here's my baby, look at it, and someone's saying, I really don't like the looks of the child's skin.
Right.
It's too yellow or whatever. And you're like, no, my child is fine. Give me that
My
kid
child
back."
is perfect. Yeah.
And
Um,
I don't
I'm
take
sorry.
criticism well.
I'm sorry, the emperor has knobby knees, and guys are going to make fun of him in the locker room. You need to. Have you
Right.
thought about doing it this way?
Well, and that's why
Maybe
I
if
say
you look into this.
you need people that you trust and you need people that will hurt your feelings. That sounds
And-
crazy, but you really do. You need people that will hurt your feelings.
and hopefully they can give you that direction, like you were saying, not to say this part sucks, but to say
Right.
this part sucks because here's a character you've introduced, and what happened to him at the end.
Right.
You
Right.
you left him in chapter 4, and we haven't heard anything left from him. What's
Right.
going on
Or
here? Because that gives you
her dad's horse. What happened to her dad's horse?
I was reading what was secret, wondering what happened to the second horse.
The one scene character that actually had dialogue, and you thought they were going to be important, but they vanished.
Yeah.
Or you got the DMs thing. So for people who don't understand, for Dungeons and Dragons, you got a throwaway character that you're just an NPC that is just there for a second, and people want to know more about him, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, we got to
Welcome to my world, Rich.
Welcome to Michaela's universe.
I just wanted to know what happened to the second horse.
I've been a DM for 45 years this year. Holy crap.
Yeah. So
I've played Dungeons and Dragons longer than some of the people in this room have been alive, but I've had that problem, throughout my life.
well, and I didn't even see it until because I first sent the first draft to Linda for Warrior's Honor, and or no, it was Worth. It was Worth, and she sends it back, and she's like, "Here's my edits, but Michael's gonna need a story, right?" Wait, why? And she's like, because you wrote him so good, even though he's a secondary character, people
So
are
is this
going to want
the
his
hot
story.
cook that you guys were talking about a minute ago?
Mhm.
Huh?
No,
Is this
no.
the hot cook that you guys were talking about a minute ago?
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, Michael, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go peel potatoes with him.
Or
Well, that's the thing. You if you're really in the moment, the words are flowing, everything is coming together, you accidentally tend to create secondary characters that are just as interesting as your primary character.
Right, which is why
And you
when
get to
people
the end of the story and you think, well, where do I go from here? I'll have to figure out what the lead characters are doing, and in the meantime, people are looking at those
Right.
secondary characters that were so well written and going,
Mhm.
I want to know more about them.
well,
Which
and,
is where
and that's why when
Michaela
someone
just
says,
went absolutely apeshit and
right,
turned it into a universe.
right. Well, and that's why when people say, how many books are there in the Warriors, in the Elite Warriors? I'm like, well, we could go with the 10 Elite Warriors so far, and say, okay, there's going to be 10 books or 11, and end it with that. But as these characters keep popping up and people are like, I want to know more about that, I don't know. There could be 40 or 50 books.
I mean, I
By the
can't
time we're all
remember the
done.
names, but you're kind of always wondering what happened to the little boy that Cassidy sees the first one after all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
He was
what
there
happened
for
to
her
him?
through a lot of good things. What happens with him? What happens with can't think of his name either. but the guy that works at the stable.
That's the
Lear.
danger.
Yeah.
With each book that you write in this
Yeah.
particular universe, you're going to introduce brand new secondary characters.
Oh,
Mhm.
heck yeah.
And if you're good at telling the story, the secondary characters from this book, people are going to want you to write a whole nother book just about them. And when you do that, the secondary characters in that one are going to write another book, and
Yes.
it
And that is
just
exactly
keeps
why
going.
Right. And people are like, how many books are there in the Elite Warriors? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, really.
Honest to God, when I'm done writing, I'll let you know. Not
And,
happy
When
yet.
and getting back to people letting you know when you've screwed up,
Ah.
and you're writing an episodic, and your cliffhanger is they dove under the porch while the bullets are.
Flying, and then, yeah, magically
The next one
there's
is
a
no
bullet flying.
mention
Yeah.
of how they
really.
got. Yeah, I was in DM. What the fuck happened? How did he get out of there?
And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I had to go back and read that episode so I could figure out what the hell was going on. I'm like, what's she talking about?
I hated critique from my mom, and I'm not overly fond of critique from Misty.
Mhm.
And it's not that they were bad at it or anything like that. It's that they love me so much that
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, are you telling me the truth? Or
Right.
are you blowing smoke up my butt so that I continue to do something that I love?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where my
And
sisters, when my sisters are like, okay, this is good, I'm like, all right, my sisters aren't afraid to beat the crap out of me because they were my first bullies.
Yeah.
I'm the youngest, so I'm the instigator. So, I had it coming sometimes.
Now, the problem I have with my wife being my first reader is she is an automatic editor. It's not that she's going to give me a critique of the book. She's going to tell me all of my typos and things like that within
Yes.
it. It's not
Well,
what I
that's-
need to know right then.
Well,
Yeah.
but okay, yeah. If you
It's
haven't
a useful
finished it,
thing,
Yeah.
but it's the wrong point in the process.
We're fixing the foundation. We'll worry about the siding in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why when it was my sister-in-law that I gave the book to, because I had this stack of papers that was the book, and that was Warrior Secret back in the day. It was in a folder, and it was just stacks and stacks of papers, and I had them numbered by hand. And I gave her the book, and she comes back to me and she goes, "Why the hell is this not published?" She was the one person that I knew wouldn't blow smoke, and she and I don't get along all the time. Lots of the time we don't get along. So if she's telling me this thing needs published, I'm like, well, maybe I got something. And thus began the journey. So as much as I don't like her right now, she is the reason that it got published. Because otherwise it would have stayed in a drawer for another 10 or 20 years. And I would have hemmed and hawed and been like, I'm not good enough. The story's not good enough. Nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to like it. Why bother?
Some of
It's
the folks
amazing
in
how
this room are
one
the
one
reason
moment
why
in
that,
time has
It is.
Oh,
It really is.
it always boils
what your
down to
secondary
one
character-
moment in time. One person saying one thing,
Yeah.
and you either give it up, which is tragic,
Yeah.
or you go, all right, I'll show your ass, and
Uh-huh.
keep going.
And I always went back to, I've always been told no my entire life. Nope, you're not good enough for that. You're not good enough for this. You're not good enough for that other thing. No. Well, I'm used to that. I didn't ever send the book in because what do I do if they say yes? And now back in the day, don't laugh too hard. But back in the day, I thought you publish one book, you become famous, and you become rich. So I was like, what
No,
if,
people don't become
what
rich.
if, I know, right? I said back in the day. Now, what if the publisher takes it, they publish it, and I become famous, and I have to go to like New York or California for a book interview? I don't know how to do those. I can't be I'm too ugly. I can't be the face of Michaela Jade. I can't do that. And my sister-in-law was like, okay, listen, send it in. If that sort of thing happens, I will be the face of Michaela Jade. Because back in the day, I was like, I'm not doing video. I'm not doing pictures. No. And she's like, you can be the mysterious person, and I'll be your spokesperson. And I'm like, well, that works. I could do that. So that's what made me send it in.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have learned one book does not make you famous.
Not usually.
But it is a confidence builder. But it did sprout your confidence because look at you now.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
if
And
you'd have told me back in 2019 that I'd had a book published in 2020, and after that I'd have 4 or 5 or 6, 7 books published
I
by
see your
2023,
Mhm.
like, there's no way in
Yeah, you'll have
hell
7.
I'd have believed you. No
You'll
way.
have 7 by the end of the month, the end of the year, and you'll have 3 Velas as of right now. So
Yeah.
People in this room are the reason that I've got 6 shorts that will be combined into a little mini collection later this
Yeah.
year. So
I just fangirl. Don't mind me.
but yeah, they quiche me.
It's
And
okay.
as much as I love Nick, he's my little brother. I love him to death, but sometimes he's toxically positive. It's like, okay, the ideas have to flow. Things have to gel before I can get it on paper. I'm kind of stuck right now because of broken things in my brain that are causing issues. I'm working on it.
yep. And the real
And
world
granted-
does get in the way,
I was
and
just gonna say,
depression
life
does
gets
get
in
in
the
the
way.
way, and
There's a 12-year-old project that he gets very hot under the collar, under no pun intended.
Sure.
because he wants more.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, so do
and
the rest
that-
of our fans, but if they
that's
don't
in the works too.
understand that we need our time, then they're going to get a crappy product.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
I'd rather have you-
spend the time and not send out a crappy product, because then you're going to do it again and again, and pretty soon your readers are like, well, she had really good books, but now they're really crappy, so I don't read them anymore. Then you've
Mhm.
lost your readers.
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
leads me
And
to another
and
question.
Dawn, fangirls are important.
And
That's the only reason I'm into this.
and fan folk for those who are non-specific. But
Mhm.
that leads into another question. What myths about publishing and getting into writing and publishing do you guys want to bust for people who are afraid to take that first step, or if they've written something, take that next step?
That would
It's
be
not as
that would be-
complicated as you would think. I used to think you had to get an agent. The agent had to find your publisher.
Back in the day, that was more true, but today it's
Right.
not in any way, shape, and or form.
right.
Right. In today's world, in today's market, you can network with enough people and the right people that you don't need the funds. You don't need a big bank account to start out. You don't need to know the right people starting out.
Unless you
just
want to get
need to
into
write
one of the
the words.
big houses. If you want to get into one of the big houses, you still got to do a
Yeah.
little bit more.
And
Nope.
that's why I haven't been published beforehand. When I was 19, I thought, oh, I'll do that route. You got to find
Yeah.
out who's going to publish your genre. You've got to find out when they are publishing your genre.
Yes, when they're
Gotta
calling versus
Write that cover letter. You've got to wait. And I'm the first to admit I'm lazy, and that's a lot of work.
Mhm.
So I stopped
It really
doing
was.
that, but I didn't stop writing because I
Yeah,
enjoyed writing my stories too much.
yeah. See, that's why I say I've always been a writer. It's just a matter of now I'm an author and now I'm published.
And doing that and getting books out. Okay, so Michaela can say, okay, I've got 10 books out, and getting your name known around and developing a following is now seen as more important than getting the agent and going to the big publisher and saying
Yeah.
and if that's still where you want to go,
Yeah.
that's cool. You can self-publish and then develop all those things because that's what they're really looking for. And
They actually are. On, I believe it's Penguin Random House's website, it says they want you to have a following of no less than 30,000 people, or they won't even consider you.
Mhm.
You've got to do the legwork first.
And agents
That's what I
aren't-
try to
gotta
help
do
you
the
with.
legwork after, because even if you do get in the big houses, all of the advertisement and stuff like that is on you.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've had friends that started out publishing a couple things through Penguin Random House, and they're like, screw this. The last 3 novels are going to be self-published, and we're going to go through Kickstarter to do everything to put out the stuff. And since then, it's got even easier through Lulu and Kindle Direct and Vela and Drafts to Digital and things of that nature. So the big houses are no longer the only road we have to take.
And you brought Kickstarter up. That's a huge way to get a following too, is to do the Kickstarters and things like that.
This is
But
how many people backed my project. This is how much money I earned to publish this myself. What do you want to bring to the table, publisher A, B, or C?
Right. And that's
And-
where
but
I'm
then-
at with publishers because I had such a bad run, and it wasn't the publisher, it was the editor. However, going through a publisher, they have to take their cut. They paid for the cover, they paid for the editing. You know, those things aren't cheap. I get that. But also, if I'm going to make $2 for every book that's through the publisher, but I can make $6 for every book that I publish on my own, why would I go through the publisher?
Yeah. And
Yep.
agents aren't all they're cut up to be. Back when we were writing Woodstock Dreams, because the Woodstock reunion was coming up, we hosted a small writers' con and had an agent from New York come in to talk. And so we thought we'd take advantage of having her here, getting her opinion. And she's like, oh, nobody's going to be interested in the Woodstock reunion. Okay, so we've got this book that had taken us, about a year to write. It's all ready, and nobody's going to be interested in it. Reunion came around. Oh, there were 2 fiction books and 1 true life book about for the Woodstock reunion. I'm like, could have been 3.
But it also depends on what the agents are looking at too, because agents are human, so they are fallible, but they're looking at.
Incoming.
Hi, Bucky. How can I help you?
I'm
like,
not
I'm
sure
infallible.
that's exactly what the agent said, but
Yes.
But
unless the
that was
author's name was
that
Bucky.
was an undercover agent right there.
There you go. Yep.
Woodstock Dreams is one of my better sellers.
Mhm.
What can I say? Sex, drugs, rock and roll. Oh,
Yeah.
and the gangsters too.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but sex sells. I'm sorry, it does. It's a $1 billion.
I'm so mad that I didn't know you guys didn't have you had your books with you. Okay, I'm done with my tantrum.
but agents
Okay, we'll see
tend
him
to
again.
favor certain publishers.
Yeah.
You know, like this one will work with Tor and this, and they won't bother with the others. So they're only looking at what those publishers are looking for right now.
Right.
They've got their market. They've got a connection with.
They're saturated with
Maybe
these
not
stories
one
right
of the
now.
other houses.
They're looking for this because by the time everything goes through with the manuscript you're about ready to put it in, going through the machine, if you will, it can be 2 or more years from when you
Exactly.
submit to when they are ready to publish. Not even published yet. They are ready to publish. So
Well, this was
they're-
a couple of years. We were good on the timing.
But what I'm saying
Because,
is maybe
yeah.
that agent wasn't looking at a publisher or working with a house that would be interested in that stuff. They're like, okay, 2 years from now, we think that there's going to be a market for 4 steampunk books, 2 horror books, and 1 James Bond knockoff.
One would think, though, that she would say the houses I work with don't publish that. You might want to try this. But no, it was just nobody's going to be interested in the Woodstock reunion.
Just goes to show that it wasn't a good agent.
No,
Right.
she wasn't.
That she
and you
wasn't
get
for
that in
various
every-
reasons.
Yeah. And the thing is, you get that in every, I don't want to say genre, but everything that you look for. Editors, agents, graphic designers, no matter who you work with, you're going to find those that I'm willing to do this. And you're like, well, that's not quite what I wanted. You're going to have to walk away. if you get an editor that you get edits back, and you should get a sample edit. If you've never worked with somebody before, you should be able to get a sample edit. And if they send you that sample and you're like, man, you just don't get it, walk away. Find somebody that works with you, that works the way you want to, because there are authors out there unwilling to change their style and what they do to fit the market. And I don't mean like write vampires instead of cowboys. I mean to fit the market. Like I don't write.
I'd say write vampire cowboys.
I know, right?
We got those.
So things like, I don't write like Edgar Allan Poe for a reason. That's not the way people read these days.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I were back in his time, I would need to write more like he wrote, because that's how people read. That's how people spoke. They understood it. These days, most people read it and they don't understand it. So, yeah, you've got to find just the right one in every category, every editor, publisher, everything. So you may have to work with a few before you get the right ones.
Did I not just tell you how lazy I am?
Yes, Donna. Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, so you may have to work through and get the right one for you, unless you don't give a damn. Then that's on you.
Welcome to indie publishing. It's all on you.
It's all on you.
Yeah.
But I've never seen, Donna, where you've been like, this person was supposed to do this, and this person was supposed to do this, and this. You say you're like, I'm lazy. Well, you're not expecting everybody else to pick up your slack, though, either.
Yeah.
This is true. This
Right.
is true.
You know what you know what you're doing. You know where it's so.
Obviously, you found someone that edits the way that you like and you can deal with and you can cope with. So you have,
or at least scream at
done it.
in privacy.
Yeah. So you've at least
Poor
done
Calvin.
it to a degree,
Yeah.
There's
But,
a
yeah,
reason Donna and Carl's cats have thumbs, so they can type.
Sometimes the dude abides is perfectly
Yeah.
reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing is cookie cutter.
That
I mean, not everybody
really tied the
is-
room together, man.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sometimes shortcuts are a handicap.
Well, and I don't want to say don't listen to them, but there are people that will say write to market, and they don't understand what that means. Writing to market is not, okay, vampires are hot right now, write a vampire story.
Mm-hmm.
Writing to market is simply that example I gave earlier. We don't read or speak like Edgar Allan Poe. Don't write that way. Right now, readers are wanting, well, and that's why I went with Vella, is because they want short, sweet, to the point, let's get it over with. I want that story right now.
Speaking in an archaic manner is fine.
Mhm.
One character.
Yes.
But the entire story. So, writing like Mary Shelley or Jules Verne or H.G. Wells or Edgar Allan Poe.
That's the stumbling
a
block
single-
to steampunk.
Writing
Yeah.
a single character in those styles is fine because
Yep.
it adds a quirk. It adds something interesting. It makes you have to think a little bit. But when the entire story is in that language that elders speak, if you will,
Yeah.
it's hard to go through.
Mhm.
One
you
of my
imagine
favorite books is Frankenstein, but I started reading it when I was 5, and I've read it every couple of years since then. And granted, the version I read when I was 5 was, more of a graphic novel type thing, but and then I advanced to the true form over the years and such. So, you've got if you're writing for something in the South, you don't want to use a lot of language that New York City people would get that people in the South aren't going to get, because they're going to be like, what?
Right.
That's the fun part about Hunter's Ridge, with having
Mhm.
the two major characters. One's from Chicago and the other's from Alabama.
Right. And they got to figure out how to work together.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
But again, that's that magical mix of one
Uh-huh.
person does it one way, one person does it another, so everything's not all together. And,
Oh no,
it's,
Brian's awake.
It's a Brian.
Oh.
I knew
Yeah.
someone who wanted
Hi,
to write
Brian.
about
Hey,
text
Brian.
I'd advise her not to
Text
rather
speak.
tear up my eyes and even read one word of this monstrosity. Yeah, that can be a pain in the arse.
Oh,
But I was just gonna
Um,
say, can you really see somebody writing in full Shakespearean prose making it onto the bestseller list right now?
Well,
No,
that's
yeah.
the thing.
I don't know,
If
but
your
I've
goal
written
is to
several
make the
steampunk
bestsellers
stories
list,
that are full on Jules Verne,
right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
but
and
But you're
that's
not.
they are historical. They're
Yeah.
not,
right.
Modern
they're not
day.
But
modern
Dan, are
day.
you looking for a little niche, or are you looking for selling 150,000 copies?
That's the thing.
I'm
Do you
looking to get
want
the
to make
story out of my head so I can go do something else.
right. So, and that's the difference. Like Carl doesn't give a crap if he sells another book, right, Carl?
it'd be
Like
nice.
you like writing the stories. That's
Mhm.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what you said. But then there's me who I'm like, well, I would like to sell books and make a living selling books. So in order to do that, I have a different path than Carl has. So it depends. What do you want to do? Do you want to just write the story to get it out of your head? Or do you want to write the story so that someone else will enjoy it and lots of someone else's? So then you've got to write to market. It's not writing vampires because vampires are hot. It's writing to market.
Mhm.
So
And
that's where the Bella stories come in. That's if people want to read on their phones at lunch break and they want a really short story,
Mhm.
I'll jump on it. Okay, I can give you a really short story. Problem is I wrote it in long form, so now I'm going to take it down to little form, and I'll give it to you a piece at a time. Okay.
Mhm.
Problem
It
is I don't have a
depends,
backlog.
It's kind of like if you're in the gym, okay, and you're doing a particular exercise, okay. I can get off just doing the exercise and say, okay, yeah, that's cool. At a younger point in my life, I'd be like, well, I could do the same motion and get paid if I worked in such and such industry. And that was important in those days to
Yeah.
do that. So, the payment was more important to me than the exercise of the writing, although that was important too. Now I'm at that point where I'm like, if I don't make much money on it, that's fine. I like it, the exercise of the writing.
Yes.
So that's a little different. And it depends on, like you say, where your point of view, yeah, there's, yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference. Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
friend who currently wants to write a book in the second person. You wake up in the morning, you find the covers are cold, you get up and make a pot of coffee, and I'm like,
It's a niche market. You
There-
can
no,
write it.
no,
Nobody
it
can
is. It is. And I have, and I write almost exclusively first person. And I have run into people that go, I'm not going to read a first person story. No. And
Then
I'm
don't.
going,
Yeah.
Why?
Then
Yeah.
why not? I mean, okay.
I despise.
I guess you
first
don't want my
person present.
autograph, do you?
You despise what?
I despise first person present in reading a story.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
the Hunger Games drew me in so hardcore. Because again, it goes back to that. There's something about the story I really hate, but there's something compelling that's caused me to continue to read and read the entire series.
Interesting.
I really do despise reading. I am going to go here. I am going to do this. I am going. It's I find it disjointed, and granted, it might be my learning disabilities that I have that just cause a cognitive dissonance with it. But again, I wish I could remember the lady's name that wrote the Hunger Games. I want to say
I
Suzanne
can't
Clark.
even.
That doesn't sound right. But anyways, the writer of the Hunger Games just did such a wonderful job of drawing me in to Katniss and Peeta and that entire world and
Well, you
everything
and millions
that
of other people too.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it became a hit movie franchise.
And what kills me is if you go through a traditional publisher, they will tell you you can't write that way. You have to write in third person. I'm like, well, other people did it.
and made
Well,
millions.
And you can do it.
Right.
And a first-person book is not that bad, especially if it's written in past tense, because you're telling a story that has happened already.
First person
Yeah.
past tense, I like.
I walked past the alley. This guy jumped out and tried to hit me in the head with a blackjack. So I stabbed him in the eye
Yeah.
Right.
and dragged the corpse back in the alley and scarpered the other way so I wouldn't get caught.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's all storytelling. It's just a different way to do it.
Yeah.
And there are so many different ways to tell stories and so many different ways people want to read stories.
Yeah, that's like
one of the
Michaela.
You can find your market if you get out there and get enough people to throw eyes on the page.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's
I
like
got the first name
Michaela
and the
writes.
first initial of the last name. Right.
One of the weirdest point of view books I'd ever read was called The Fruit Cocktail Diaries. And it literally was like the premise of this book is this guy was walking down the street. He found these two diary journal books that were just discarded in this alley, and he started just reading them. And he realized that there was an entry that had very feminine writing, and entries on the other book had very masculine writing. And somehow these books were intertwined, but the people didn't know who were writing it.
Huh.
Hmm.
Neat.
Well, that's like Michaela writes third person omniscient. You know what everybody's thinking, that I write third person not omniscient. You know, I write as if I'm doing a newspaper article.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she appeared to be amused, not she was amused, that sort of thing. But we both, although they're different third persons, they both work for each of us.
Yeah. But yeah, Brian's right. I mean, you can write anything you want. Just be prepared.
Really?
You're not going to get the high sales that maybe some other authors get. And maybe one day something will go viral, as they say, and someone will hit on your books, because that's like 50 Shades of Grey. I know I reference that a lot, but that was not her first books. It just so happened that someone found them and they went viral. And the first time most of us heard about it was, you'll never believe what this book says. And then bam, everybody's got to read it and find out what it says.
It's the vanilla version of King.
Yeah.
I've never read the 50 Shades. I've never read any Coho. I've never read any of the Twilight books. I for some reason stay away from a lot of the mainstream. Once they become so popular, I'm just like, I don't care. I want to go find something obscure.
Yeah.
Which is one reason I love going to like book sales, like church basement book sales. Because you never know what you're going to find, what little gem you're going to find on a used book about an author that maybe has released 3 books in their entire life.
Yeah.
And somehow it made its way there.
How
Brian's last statement, I would love if someone bought my books to
Passive third
burn.
person future. I can't even imagine that.
I know. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
hang on. What? Someone can want anyone's book. It might be for kindling, but they'll want it. Right. That's what I'm saying. I mean,
I'll be fine if people want to burn my books.
As long as they buy them first.
Yeah.
As long as they're purchased, yeah.
Yeah.
As long as they're not
Do your
snatching
thing.
them out of other people's hands, because that's just a dick move.
So you've snatched things out of other people's hands, huh? Haven't you, Rich?
Yeah.
Although
snatched out of my hands.
if you snatch them out of an imaginary person's hands, that's a PK dick move.
Oh, Lord.
Bum.
You have been around Joe Dog too long.
This irritates Nick to no end. I don't care if I make a dime off my writing. I want to write things that I enjoy, that I think are cool as all hell, that I want to share with other people, but I want the help of other people to make sure the stuff I write is as cool as
you
my
see
broken
it.
head thinks it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and
That's
I
very
still do
close
that.
that's very close to the way that I work. I
Can
want
be.
to write the stories I want to read, but nobody else is writing them, so I've got to.
Yeah.
Is this fair?
Yeah.
Have
do
you
the
met
very
this
same
person?
thing. I write what I want to read. But my problem is, I know that if I don't stay within the mainstream stuff, I won't make much money on it.
Right.
But then there's the flip side to that coin, because if I go as dark as I want to go with some of these stories, I will have a niche market that will just eat this shit up.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, how dark do you go before you cross a line? I haven't found it yet.
Sometimes you got to cross the line before you know exactly where it
That's the
is.
thing. I'm sure I'll get told as soon as I cross it, but when I cross it, it will be epic.
As a
I'm
I just
not
can't
sure
wait
I
to
would
see
have
that
told
back
that
out.
one. Yeah.
I really think,
I have-
Michaela, you've
I have-
stalled though. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry. Go. I was just going to say I have an example of what Michaela was talking about, but I'll wait till Dawn's finished.
I was just going to say, I think right now Michaela has stalled out sales wise because Secret's not there.
Yeah.
And I think once Secret comes back, she's going to get another push and big oomph of
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
a tidal
Because
wave. Right now, it's
not-
like,
Right. Well, and I know that at when I go to book signings, it's hard to sell books 2, 3, 4, and 5 if you don't have one, or they don't already have one at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Michaela, you were talking about not making as much money.
Mm-hmm.
I had written a magazine article, and it was all about how to make movies using storyboards, because I had studied
Mhm.
Hitchcock, and Hitchcock used storyboards to do his movies. I thought that was fascinating, so I'd studied up on it. I'd written this article. Video Maker magazine says, "Yeah, we'll buy it. We'll pay $100 for that article." I'm like, "Okay, cool." I didn't expect that, but yeah, write the check. Then they said, "You know what? You did well on that one. Why don't you write another one for us? Our regular guy dropped out. We'll pay you $350 for this article if you'll write it." I'm like, "Okay, I'm listening." It's all about edit controllers for VCRs, so you could edit tapes together.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you make that interesting?
It was real exciting writing that article, but they paid me $350 for that.
Right.
So I was like, I can write stuff I hate and make more money, or I can write stuff I like and make less money. I'm going to write stuff I like.
Well, and
or
that's
you can do a little of both.
Yeah, I had looked for jobs in my area or jobs I could do at home that would pay me to write. And when you look for legitimate jobs that will pay you to write, they're mostly for companies that need ad copy,
Mm-hmm.
which, okay, I can do that once or twice, but I'd get bored with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because how many different ways can you say buy my shit?
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason that I gave up doing book reviews, actually.
Right,
Having to work
many
with
ways.
marketing
I
department,
ran out of ways
you'd
of
be
saying,
surprised.
hey, this is great. Y'all should buy it.
Yeah, so that stopped me from that one. But then there's also companies that they want you to write for their website. I'm like, okay, so once I'm done writing stuff for the website, then what am I going to do? You're just going to hire me on at, I think it was something like a $60,000 salary. So not horrible, but it's like, so do you have like a blog that I'm supposed to write on every day and I'm supposed to know the company inside out? Do I just sit there and monitor the website? It was very vague, but it was like, we need a writer for our website. And I'm like, I don't think that's for me. So, I mean, there are ways to get paid, but are they worth it to you? Some people, yes.
But it's become a job at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, really.
Yes, then it becomes
Is
a
it
job.
is it something in a direction you want to go, or would you
Right.
like to pursue your own interests?
Right. Well, and
or
that's the
It
outdoor
depends on
magazine.
whether or not that 60 grand is the
Mhm.
uppermost thing in your mind, or
Right.
if you
And
have
once
you've got the bug and you want to turn out stories.
Mhm.
and once writing has become a job, are you going to be so interested in writing your own stuff?
No. That's a friend of mine. We were talking about, she was having trouble writing, and she was really struggling. Like, she couldn't put 2 words down a day. Like, she just couldn't do it. And so finally it got to the point where she's like, I think now that writing is fun, I can do it. But when I viewed it as a job, I couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it every day because I knew I had to do it every day. I knew I had a deadline. I knew I had to get so many words down per day. When I do that, I don't want to do it. When it's fun and I'm telling stories, I want to do it.
And it flows when it's fun.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Because then you start thinking of ideas of, okay, how can I make this story action packed? How can I slow the story down? How can I, then it's fun. It's not, well, okay, I got to get 500 words down today or 5,000 words down today. What are the words?
I think it also depends on outlook and mindset as well.
Yes.
Because you got to look at fields like my field, IT. You would think we are so sick of computers that we don't want to have anything to do with them as soon as we get home. What do most of us do when we get home? We
play with computers.
We game. We do all sorts of stuff on computers. But again, that's the mindset of the majority of the people in my field. Now, there are probably a lot of people who are out there who are writing these mindless, boring, soul-sucking pieces, but it reminds them, hey, if I can do that on this, what can I do on a project that I think is going to be fun?
Yeah.
So it's you got to kind of
and those are the lucky people that can find a way to have fun with it.
It depends on
turn
how
it
they're
from the
broken in their
mindless
head.
soul sucking to something that's fun.
Yeah. Have you seen Duluth Trading's advertisement? That person is having an absolute blast doing ad copy.
Duluth Trading Post?
Yes.
I love them. I absolutely love
that
them.
Is a person or persons.
Liberty Mutual. The stuff they come up with in their stuff.
Yep.
I wonder what kind of shrooms they're doing.
He runs through the car wash and comes out with shrunken pants.
Right. So, but the job description for that is come to our company and write ad copy for us. How boring does that sound? But that person or persons or group of people took that, flipped it on its head and went, we're going to have fun with this. If this is what we have to do, we're going to have fun with it.
Thinking of the Duluth Trading Company.
And the first time they submitted that, they probably said, look, we're going to get fired, but we're going to submit this and see what happens. And bam. This
mayhem.
Yeah, really.
Researching
sales took off.
Too. What kind of company is this? What is their company outlook and things of that nature? Like someone doing marketing for a law firm. Oh hell no, they're not going to be able to get away with that kind of thing. But it's like, hey, we're looking for, like Liberty Mutual says, you look for stuff that has nostalgia. You look for stuff that ties this memory in, stuff like that, which is why like they hit things a certain way.
The billboard for the lawyer that's just outside of Peoria, it's 2 wedding rings that are like interconnected, the rings are. And you can see one's a man's ring, one's a woman's ring, but it's a lawyer's website or billboard. And it says, oops, call me.
At the bottom of the billboard, is a wire cutter reaching up for the rings.
Right, like, oops.
Driving into work, because I get to work from home most of the time. Driving into work, driving into Chicago, there is a law firm that has Rick Astley on its billboard.
They get rickrolled every day.
Yes. It is,
you're gonna get rickrolled anyway. Might as well be by us.
I think it's for like a bankruptcy attorney, something like that, and they're never going to give you up. They're never going to let you down. They're never going to run around and desert you.
Yeah,
as I think what the board says, and the first time I saw that, I was laughing so hard, I almost wrecked the car.
Yeah. Well, that was me when I first saw that sign that said oops, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Okay, that's probably the best divorce lawyer sign I've ever seen in my life.
Oops,
So we figured
there
it out.
is.
You got to get a billboard, Michaela.
Oh, I've been thinking about it for a while. In fact, I think I had Just Secret out. I think that's all I had out. And I was like, wonder how much a billboard costs. I wonder how much a radio ad costs. Like, I'm thinking on it, dude. Seriously.
Good.
Ooh, magnets for the car.
Oh, that's already in the works.
Uh-oh. Oh, that's the thing. Let me.
I need one of those.
We've gone about 2 hours.
Yep.
You wanna-
Yeah, we have. My iPad battery just went, hey,
Yeah.
you better turn on the charger or this channel's going dead.
Some of you have been here for 2 hours. Some of us were tardy.
Some of us were a little earlier.
Yeah, I
Well,
know.
early and tardy.
Some of us live here. I mean, seriously.
Oh, I've seen those, Brian. Yeah, those are.
Yes. Yeah, the stupid hammer things. Yes.
Well, there's also the guy in Minnesota, Lindahl, that's got the arms spread out, and that's huge. That's like, yeah.
It's like you have more money than sense. Shut up and go home. So anyway, I think it was a good discussion tonight. I think we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah,
And like
we
I said,
did.
I don't know why I didn't figure that readers were the shy lot or a shy group of people. But for the most part, readers are shy. Go figure.
Yeah, really. They don't want to give us any of their money.
Diving into a book to escape the world around me? Never.
Yeah. Yep. So, all right.
wait,
So we
I'm not that
will
shy.
end it there. We'll say goodbye. And I'll find
I will
the right-
update the graphic that says 9/8 Central from here on through at least the summer.
Yes. For at least through the summer, we're going to start at 8 o'clock. Sorry if that's too late for some people, but for me, that's what works. Okay.
It's Tuesday. I mean, seriously, what else am I going to do? Watch YouTube videos all night?
Yeah.
isn't that kinda what you're doing now?
No, we're participating in YouTube videos now.
Yeah.
Oh,
now we're
okay. I was close, Rich. I was
We'll
close.
get a participation trophy.
Yeah.
All right. See you
Thanks for
later,
having me.
guys. I'm
See you
gonna-
in 2
Good night.
weeks.
Good night, everyone.